During the fantasy football season, is the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking heading into the year. The first guy, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So right here, I could say comfortably Allen's going to be the number one guy coming into the season after a monster year last year. And this Bill team, a great offense, adding some weapons as well with Jameis Crowder, James Cook, and I think Gabriel Davis has a big year as well. So last season for Allen, 4,407 pass yards, 36 touchdowns passing, 15 interceptions, 763 rush yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns with 3 two-point conversions. So he does it all as Allen. And they're projecting another monster year for him, 4,650 pass yards, 38 touchdowns, 540 rush yards, and 7 touchdowns with 9 interceptions. So this Bill team definitely could be a favorite in the AFC, which is a loaded conference right now. And Allen's got all the weapons. He could make all the throws, and he's got good legs as well here. So I like him number 1 at quarterback this season. Number 2, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Herbert entering his 3rd season of his NFL career. A monster year last year, 5,014 pass yards, 38 touchdowns, 15 in those, 302 rush yards, 3 touchdowns, point conversion. So this Charger team, they could be a team that either don't make the playoffs or can make the Super Bowl. That's how boom or bust they could be. But one thing is for certain, Justin Herbert's going to be a great fantasy quarterback. He's got all the weapons I can mention. Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, a good upgraded tight end in my opinion. And he's a guy that just goes out there and he throws that football 40, 45 times a game here. And this season, his projections are big ones as well. 4,925 pass yards, 39 passing touchdowns, 290 rush yards, 2 touchdowns, and 10 intos. Yeah, he'll add some rushing as well to it is Justin Herbert, but he picks his spots when he wants to run. But he's a gunslinger. He's got a big arm. He's got great weapons, and it's going to be another great season here for him. And he's a guy right now going in fantasy drafts, 3rd or 4th round, and I got him at the number 2 quarterback this season. Number 3, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I know Patrick Mahomes lost his biggest weapon and deep threat in Tyreek Hill, but they still added some decent receivers to the mix. Is this Kansas City Chief team. Tyreek Hill's gone, so they got Juju Smith-Schuster, but let's see if he could stay healthy. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling was a big target and could stretch the field as well. So last season here for Patrick Mahomes, 4,839 pass yards, 37 touchdowns, 13 in those, 381 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 two-point conversions, and 4 fumble losses. So right here, good season, no doubt about it last year for Mahomes. But the numbers went down just a bit. He's going right now 4th or 5th round, but he's still a great talent, no doubt. He's a guy that could even be the number 1 quarterback when it's all said and done. These first 3 guys I just spoke about, you can't go wrong with any of them. And his projections on the year, 4,840 pass yards, 35 touchdowns, 310 rush yards, 2 touchdowns, and 9 intos. And Mahomes, I know without Tyreek Hill, I think he's going to be fine. He's a quarterback that can make players better, like Tom Brady did, obviously, in his New England Patriot days with limited help, and still won a few Super Bowls with questionable receiving cores. Number 4, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Burrow, what a season last year after coming off the ACL, getting hurt in his rookie season. And this Bengal team almost took the whole thing last year, losing in the Super Bowl to the Rams. 4,611 pass yards, 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, only 118 rush yards, which I think he could get more rushing yards this season as the knee heals more. 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 two-point conversions, and 2 fumble losses. So right here, this Bengal offense is loaded this year once again. Joe Mixon, they upgraded the offensive line, adding Lyle Collins. So you got Mixon at running back. You got Jamar Chase, who had the monster rookie season. Got T. Higgins, got Tyler Boyd, and even Hayden Hurst I can think be a decent tight end receiving for this team after C.J. Uzomah left in free agency to the New York Jets. So Joe Burrow, another good season it's going to be for him, and they're projecting him to actually go for 5,070 pass yards, 40 touchdowns, 120 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 13 intos. So a monster projection out there for Joe Burrow, and I think he could throw for 5,000 yards. He's only in his 3rd year, and it only could be up for here for Joe Burrow, which is definitely scary. And it wouldn't be surprising as well if he could be possibly a 1 and 2 top quarterback. A lot of good quarterbacks early in fantasy drafts. And Burrow right now, he's going 4th or 5th round in most leagues as well. Number 5, I got Tom Brady. So right now, some people would have a Lamar Jackson, a Kyler Murray over a Tom Brady. I got Brady at number 5. He's back once again this season. Last season, 5,300, 16 pass yards, 43 touchdowns, 12 intos, 81 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 3 fumble losses. And the man's back together except Rob Gronkowski retiring. But they upgraded a receiver, I believe, here. Russell Gage is more dependent than Antonio Brown, even though Brown was decent before he went AWOL on this Buck team last season. So you got Gage, you got Julio Jones, who I think still has something left in the tank, and they don't got to rely on him to play a major role. He's going to be a 4th receiver on this Tampa Bay Buck team, and Kyle Rudolph could go out there and make plays as well for this Tampa Bay Buck team. And Cameron Brate, so I think Brady once again has a monster season. I don't know if he's going to reach 5,000 yards, but I think once again he's going to do pretty good, is Brady, anywhere from 4,500 to 4,800 pass yards, and have about 35, 40 touchdowns. And this Buck team's ready to roll here. So Tom Brady's number 5 in my book. Number 6, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So Lamar Jackson, I'm not as high as him as other people here. I know he's going to rush for almost 1,000 yards most likely this season, but he has limited weapons on that offense. Hollywood Brown's gone. He got traded away to the Cardinals in a puzzling move. Rashad Bateman's his number 1 receiver, but I don't think he's going to scare defenses. Mark Andrews, we know he's a stud tight end. I got him at the number 2 tight end ranked this season. But Lamar Jackson, he can't throw the football. The blueprint's out there a little bit, how to stop him. And he's been taking some big hits over the last few seasons, and that's what cost him last year for the most part. Last year, 2,882 pass yards, 16 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, which is a horrible ratio, 767 rush yards, which obviously is amazing for a quarterback, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 two-point conversions, and 3 fumble losses. What this season, in a full year, they're projecting 3,460 pass yards, 29 passing touchdowns, 880 rushing yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, and 13 intos. So right here, those numbers are definitely reachable in his projection as Jackson. But without a great outside threaded receiver, it's definitely going to hurt the numbers a little bit, I think, here for Lamar. And he's a guy that I just think he's going to have some great games and some bad games it's going to be for Jackson. So right now, I got him in number 6, and I think he's going to be a bust in terms of ADP this season. Going anywhere from the 4th or 5th round, I think it's a little bit too early for Jackson. Well, the question marks I brought up, number 7, Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. So Kyler Murray, he's a quarterback that I think, honestly, he just looks to run almost every play here is Murray. Right now, no DeAndre Hopkins for the first amount of weeks for the season here. Last season, 3,787 pass yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 intos, 423 rush yards, 5 rushing touchdowns. Kyler Murray. But even though he had a decent season in the beginning of the year, second half of the year, he just didn't do much as Kyler Murray. And he had the ball games where he only had 10, 15 fantasy points. I know he signed a big extension in the offseason here, is Kyler Murray, but a lot of teams got the blueprint on him right now. And he's a quarterback. Yeah, I still got him at 7 because the rushing yards do play a huge factor in fantasy football. And obviously, Murray could put up tons of rushing yards for fantasy owners, getting an extra 5 to 10 fantasy points minimum per week at that. So that's why I got him in number 7. But I also could see Murray have a down year as well. So right now he's going anywhere from 5th to the 7th round of fantasy drafts here. But he's not a guy I'm too high on as well because he could go either way this season. But at number 7, because of the rushing yards, he's a better fantasy quarterback than a real-life one. Number 8, Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos. So Russ finally traded out of Seattle after we heard rumblings for a few seasons. And Seattle, they just didn't run that high-tempo offense like Russ wanted. Last year, not a great year in terms of passing yards and touchdowns for Russ in Seattle. And he had great weapons like Metcalf and Lockett, obviously. 3,113 pass yards, 25 touchdowns, 6 intos, 183 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2-point conversion and a fumble loss. But right here in Denver, they're going to run the up-tempo offense, and they got great weapons. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy are going to be great players this season here, I think. Those are 2 guys that definitely could break out and help fantasy owners in a big way are those two wide receivers. And Javonte Williams, I think he's going to be a stud running back once again this year. And even Melvin Gordon has a little bit left in the tank. So with this offense being up-tempo, with Russ having tons of weapons and a nice running game finally this season, and an offensive line that can protect them in Denver, unlike in Seattle, I think he has a breakout year once again is Russell Wilson. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if he's a guy that could finish in the top 5 at quarterback. And they got good projections for him as well. 4,240 pass yards, 34 touchdowns, 235 rush yards, 2 touchdowns rushing, and 8 intos. Russ was always a guy with low turnover rates. And I think we'll see the same again this season from him in Denver. Number 9, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So I like Jalen Hurts a lot this season, but he's going a little bit too early, I think, in fantasy drafts, anywhere from the 5th to the 6th round. But Hurts, he's got a nice new weapon at wide receiver in A.J. Brown, who's definitely a game changer and a big play wide receiver. And Jalen Hurts last season, in the full season as a starter for Philly, 3,144 pass yards, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 784 rush yards, with 10 rushing touchdowns, which is a big number, 3 two-point conversions, and 2 fumble losses. And the thing with Jalen Hurts is he's not like a Lamar Jackson or a Kyler Murray where he's looking to run. He picks his spots more than anything when he wants to run, and he goes unscathed for the most part in his running attempts here as Jalen Hurts. I like the offense. The division has weak defenses, in my opinion. The Commanders' defense ain't all that. Giants defense, they've been getting gashed for years. And the Dallas Cowboys has a leaky secondary as well. So Jalen Hurts could put up big numbers. But I think the quarterbacks I mentioned have a little more upside and a little better offenses around them. Even though Hurts has weapons with Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert at his 3 main pieces. And a great guy with his legs. But he's definitely a good quarterback once again this season, Hurts. But I got him at 9. Number 10, Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. I know he's lost Valdez-Scantling and Devontae Adams traded after he got his big money contract from the Vegas Raiders. So Rodgers last season, another masterful piece season, 115 pass yards, 37 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 101 rush yards, 3 rushing touchdowns for Rodgers. So right here, another monster year. He never turns the ball over, it seems like, is Rodgers. But now let's see what he could do without a real number 1 guy like Devontae Adams, without Lazard, and a bunch of question marks, Robert Tonyan. But they're going to run the ball a lot, I think, this season as well with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. But right now, Aaron Rodgers, he's still going to throw the ball a lot. He's still going to be putting up numbers. He's not going to put up 40 total touchdowns, I think, like he did last season. But I think his projections are pretty accurate. 4,190 pass yards, 30 touchdowns, 130 rush yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns with 5 interceptions. So right here, he probably won't force the issue. He's got a great IQ, and he's a guy that just knows when he's got to throw it away and with to play for the next thing. So right now, in a lot of fantasy leagues, he's ranked 13th to the 15th range at the quarterback position you see on a lot of websites. But Aaron Rodgers is definitely a guy I'm not going to count out. And I think he's a quarterback that wants to prove a lot of people wrong as well, that he could get the job done and have a great season without a great wide receiver like a Devontae Adams. And he just signed a monster extension as well as Rodgers. So right here, I got him in number 10. Number 11, Trey Lance of the San Francisco 49ers. So a lot of hype and a lot of buzz around Lance entering the season here. He's taking the starter's job from Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's a guy with great legs. And they got the gadget guys on this roster to build this offense around them, like they did with Lamar Jackson over there in Baltimore a few seasons ago. And Kyler Murray, obviously, in Arizona. So right here, Trey Lance last season in a cup of coffee with a few starts. 603 pass yards, 5 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 168 rush yards of rushing touchdowns. So Lance is another guy that could get fantasy owners easily 8 to 10 fantasy points possibly a week on the ground. And he's got good weapons. You got Deebo Samuel, you got George Kittle, you got Brandon Ayuk, and you got a good form of running backs over there. Eli Mitchell, if he could stay healthy, obviously. Jamal Hasty's back there, Jeffrey Wilson. All those guys are capable of stepping in and playing decent. And Trey Sermon, a lot of people forgotten about, as well could be a factor in that backfield depending how it goes. But right now, Lance, he's going to be a high upside quarterback this season. And he's a guy that's looked good so far in training camp. and the few preseason drives he's had. So the projections for him, 3,215 pass yards, 25 touchdowns, 645 rush yards, 6 touchdowns rushing, and 14 interceptions. So yes, turnovers I think will be a problem for Trey Lance, but he's a guy that could put up elite numbers from time to time, and especially running the football, he could definitely be up there with a Murray or Lamar, possibly this season. So I like Lance at number 11. Number 12, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So Dak Prescott, I'm not that high on him this season like a lot of people are. Right now, he's going 8th and 9th round in most fantasy drafts, but I think is a decent ADP here for Dak. Last season, his best season in his career, 4,449 pass yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 of those, 146 rush yards, a rushing touchdown, 3 2-point conversions, and 6 fumble losses. But Dak Prescott, the issue with him for me is he don't show up versus the good teams. He don't really even put up the fantasy numbers. And towards the end of the season, for the most part last year, he was pretty much idle for fantasy owners. He had a few big weeks with a few mediocre weeks and non-existent weeks mixed in there. So he's got to be more consistent. And like I said, it might be a problem. Amari Cooper's gone, even though I know Cooper wasn't that great last season for Dallas. Cedric Wilson's gone, which he was a key third receiver on this Dallas Cowboy team. And Ezekiel Elliott, he's definitely declining, where teams are going to try to make Zeke try to beat him instead of Dak going out there and throw it all over the field. So this season, the projections, 4,500, 10 pass yards, 35 touchdowns, 110 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 9 intos. So right here, Dak Prescott maybe could have a great season once again this year. Last year, the numbers overall ended up looking great, but there were a lot of downtimes for him where he padded stats in a few games where he put up numbers. In other games, he didn't do anything. But right now, with a lack of targets at wide receiver and only Schultz and CeeDee Lamb, the only proven guys, Dak's going to have to find ways to make other players better, and these guys got to step up as well. So right now, I have him at number 12. Number 13, Derek Carr of the Vegas Raiders. So Derek Carr, a guy you could get sneakily late in your fantasy draft, 10th to the 12th round range, and he's got great offense behind him. Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, one of the best tight ends. Davante Adams, what a piece to add in the offseason here. And Hunter Renfrow, one of the best slot and possession receivers in the league. So last season, he put up a good year, I thought, is Derek Carr, even though he was inconsistent at times. 4,804 yards, 23 touchdowns, 14 in those, 108 rush yards, and 5 fumble losses. And there's going to be a lot of shootouts in this AFC West this season. You got the Broncos, who would definitely improve. You got the Chargers, and you got the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is going to be a fun division here. A lot of shootouts and a lot of great fantasy quarterbacks here. So Derek Carr, I'd be comfortable going into the season with him as my starter, honestly, for a guy who could put up similar numbers with the guys anywhere ranked from 6 to 12, in my opinion. He's going to put up yards. He's got a great number 1 wide receiver in Davante Adams. Great tight end, solid running back, even though for some reason the Raiders are down on Josh Jacobs, and Hunter Renfrow, a good weapon. So I like Carr this season at 13. Number 14, Matthew Stafford of the Super Bowl winning Los Angeles Rams. So Stafford, there's some concern about his elbow coming into the season, but he's got a great offense with him as well, even though Odell Beckham is hurt, and obviously didn't re-sign as well with this Los Angeles Ram team. So last season, what a year for him, 4,886 pass yards, 41 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, 43 rush yards, 2 two-point conversions, and 2 fumble losses. A lot of great quarterbacks this season here, in my opinion, for fantasy football, where I would honestly wait to the 9th to 10th round to get my quarterback. You could get a guy like Stafford in that range. You could get a Carr, and even a Dak Prescott or a Trey Lance could even fall there. So right, yeah, the problem with Stafford is the elbow, but he's got Cooper Kupp, you got Allen Robinson, Tyler Higbee, still a pretty decent tight end, Cam Akers, and Darrell Henderson will be the backs over there in Los Angeles. But right now it's about rest, and that elbow being healthy is why I'm a little bit concerned. But right now the projections, if he's healthy, 4,750 pass yards, 36 passing touchdowns, 14 interceptions projected here for Matthew Stafford. So if he puts up a similar type of season like he did last year, we're going to see a lot of 30 and 40-point fantasy games from Matthew Stafford. But right now, with the injury and the concerns, it seems like, over there in Los Angeles, I got him in number 14. Number 15, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. So Cousins, I believe he's a forgotten guy in fantasy football. And he's another guy over here. You could take him very late in fantasy leagues, and he could have those 25, 30-point games weekly pretty much. Last season, 4,200. 21 pass yards, a little low for Kirk Cousins. Usually his passing yards are higher. 33 touchdowns, though, only 7 interceptions, which is very good. He's usually more prone to the turnovers. 115 rush yards, a rushing touchdown, and 2 fumble losses. So right now, this Viking team, they're prime and ready to have a monster offensive season once again. Justin Jefferson, one of the best wide receivers in the league. Dalvin Cook, a monster out of the backfield, which just opens up everything over there. And Adam Thielen, a lot of people sleeping on him as well, where I believe he's still a solid wide receiver and could do damage. And Irv Smith Jr. is a tight end I've been liking for years as well, and he's the starter finally over there in Minnesota. So right here, this Viking team, they're going to be good. And Kirk Cousins, he's a guy who could be comfortable going into the season as my starting quarterback. If you just want to load up a receiver and running back a lot in your fantasy draft, and you go out there and you take Kirk Cousins, I would be perfectly fine with that, to be honest with you. And I think Cousins has a big season, especially with a playmaker like a Justin Jefferson on that offense. Number 16, Jameis Winston of the New Orleans Saints. So this Saint team, we'll see what happens this season. If Winston could stay healthy after he's coming off the torn ACL and MCL, is Jameis Winston. Well, Winston, he has some decent options on that offense. Alvin Kamara, I think he has a bounce-back season over there, obviously in New Orleans. Michael Thomas, he's a guy you can't count on. A guy would stay away. And I've mentioned it in tons of videos, but people are still hyped about Michael Thomas bouncing back this season, but already having hamstring issues in training camp in the preseason here. But right now, Winston, we saw what he could do, obviously, in his heyday with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Even though he throws a lot of interceptions, he could put up yards in a hurry, and he could get the ball to his playmakers in a hurry. Chris Olave, I like on this offense over here in New Orleans. Michael Thomas, yeah, he's going to be a question mark. But Alvin Kamara, I think they're going to use him a lot out of the backfield. And also Taysom Hill, we could see in some gadget plays. So Winston, as the number 16 quarterback, I think it's a safe thing. Obviously, I'm not going to be comfortable going into a 12-team league with him as my starting quarterback. The cutoff for that with me is Kirk Cousins. I would be comfortable. And then after that, these guys could be diamonds in the rough, or guys as backup quarterbacks, or 2 quarterback guys to have on your roster. But right now, Jameis Winston, he always had a big arm, always has good upside, and he gets the ball to the guys that needs to get it done. So right now, number 16, number 17, Trevor Lawerence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Trevor Lawerence, it was a pretty bad rookie season for him last year, but he did have a lack of weapons. This season, they went out there and they overpaid for a bunch of guys. No doubt about it at Jacksonville. But Christian Kirk, they brought in Evan Ingram. Travis Etienne, his college teammate, is 100% and ready to go. He'll add some dynamic out of the backfield to the passing game, even though people are overrating him as well, I believe, in fantasy football. Right here, Lawerence last season, 3,641 pass yards, 12 touchdowns, 17 in those, 334 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 5 fumble losses. So right here, with some of the weapons they've added in the offseason, I think he's going to improve here as Trevor Lawerence. He's got to cut back on the interceptions. He's got to get the touchdowns going. Last season, I believe he went 6 or 7 games without a passing touchdown in a row, which obviously is a big number. So right now, Lawerence, more weapons, was a great college quarterback, went lost, if at all, for the most part, is Lawerence. And I think he bounces back a little bit this season in Jacksonville. And he's a guy that definitely can help fantasy owners, and a guy you take a flyer on late in fantasy drafts. Number 18, Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. So right here, the Bears have no wide receivers whatsoever. Cole Kmet and David Montgomery are pretty much the 2 only guys on that offense that are fantasy worthy right now, even though we could see a couple guys break out maybe towards the end of the season. But Justin Fields, he's a quarterback that, honestly, watching him last season, I wasn't impressed at all with him. He looked like he was going to want to run every other play, and he took a lot of hits and a lot of sacks. So last season, 1,870 pass yards, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 420 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 5 fumble losses. So those numbers were horrible. But with his running ability, I got to keep him inside the top 20. And they're going to be throwing a lot. This bad team's going to be bad, like I mentioned here. And they're going to need Fields to throw a lot. They're going to need him to make plays with his legs. And that's exactly what he's going to do. But I'm not going to be confident going into the season with him as a starter. So for a guy for a 2 quarterback league or a backup or a guy to just keep an eye on the waiver wire, Justin Fields, I have at number 18. Number 19, Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. I know Tannehill lost his number one man, A.J. Brown, in a trade after they didn't want to pay him the big bucks, and the Eagles gave up the draft picks and the big contract extension to get him. But I think the Titans had a decent offseason, fill in the holes A.J. Brown and Julio Jones left. You got Burks in the draft, which was a good draft pick, and I believe it was the pick that was for A.J. Brown. And then Robert Woods was a good trade, only for a fifth-rounder when he's a professional receiver and a guy that can make plays. So Ryan Tannehill last season, a mediocre year, 3,734 pass yards, 21 touchdowns, 14 in those, 270 rush yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, which is the thing that's underrated about Tannehill. He uses his legs a lot to get rushing yards and touchdowns, and that's what he did last season. And this receiving core was down a lot last season, and Derrick Henry missed a tons of games as well, which he opens up the old field. So if they stay healthy here, Woods and Burks a pretty good 1-2 combo in my opinion. And Austin Hooper's a sleeper as well at the tight end position. That he's a guy we've seen him make plays in his Atlanta Falcon days where he could score touchdowns and be a target in the red zone. So right now, number 18, I got Tannehill. And number 20, Matt Ryan of the Indianapolis Colts. So after 14 seasons in Atlanta, they moved on here from Matty Ice and traded him to Indianapolis. And it's a good situation there here. They got a good defense, great running game, no doubt about it, with Jonathan Taylor, and a good guy for third downs in Nyheim Hines. And he's got a nice number one wide receiver in Michael Pittman, who he could play similar role like him and Julio Jones did in their heyday in Atlanta, getting that ball up there for the deep threat in Pittman. So last season, tough year for Matt Ryan in Atlanta, and it was just time for him to go as Atlanta's going in a different direction with all the young guys, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Tyler Algier, and even going in a rebuild year with Marcus Mariota as a quarterback. So last season here for Matty Ice, 3,968 pass yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 in those, 82 rush yards, a rushing touchdown, 4 fumble losses. So right there, those numbers weren't totally horrible here for Matt Ryan. But right now, he goes to a better offense with the best running back in pro football coming into the season. You got a good wide receiver in Michael Pittman, who could be the number one for sure. They're just missing out on that number 2 guy in the tight end. They got Doyle and Mo Alley-Cox, who could obviously be red zone targets and guys who can make plays. So right now, as a backup quarterback or a number 2 quarterback in fantasy leagues, I'd be comfortable with Matt Ryan in that position. So that's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking heading into the fantasy football season and fantasy drafts in the upcoming days or weeks, depending when your draft is.